Okay, today's video is going to be about Richard Madeley and Miranda Whelehan. Now, this happened about last year now, but let's get straight into it. Right, so I haven't seen this video in a while, but I have watched it before, so we're going to watch it, go over it, and we're going to see what it is she does. Now, based on what I've seen of it before, she does an amazing job of just handling herself and just standing up for herself and just standing and ground. So let's get into it.
If you were around where I was at the weekend, there was queues and queues of people possibly panic buying, which is what some of the companies are saying.
I didn't see panic buying, but I did see a lot of food courts that we had sold out.
Yeah, and I
think people driving around.
Yes, and of course we've got 21.5 million people on the road this week for Easter. Yep. And of course, you know, there are lots of questions over whether there's going to be enough fuel for everybody because of these protests that have been going on. And the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has called the protests by eco-activists as selfish and fanatical. Demonstrations were held across the weekend in oil depots and on bridges in central London, which saw dozens of people arrested. It affected the Midlands too, and it may well spread across the country if these protests carry on.
Well, obviously the climate activists involved say that they need to bring an end to the use of fossil fuels. So are they in danger of turning people off that cause by these actions? Well, let's have a chat. Joining us now to discuss this is Miranda Whelehan. She's a Just Stop Oil activist. She says that we have to move away from oil for good. And journalist Larry Turner, who thinks that activists are irritating when they disrupt travel and they block roads. We'll come to you in a minute, Larry. Many people would agree that we have to wean ourselves off oil, we have to wean ourselves off fossil fuels, we have to develop renewables. I certainly feel that. But at the same time, they deeply resent having their personal lives massively interrupted by the actions of people like you are taking. They can't get fuel for their cars, they can't get fuel for their central heating systems. They worry that if something bad happens, that an ambulance won't get to them because that won't have fuel. Do you accept that you're possibly alienating people who, in a general sense, would support your background cause? Because you are alienating.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I don't think any of us want to be disrupting people's lives, but I think given the science and the things that academics are saying about what oil is causing around the world, and in this country too, this is the level of action that needs to be taken when our government is failing on their energy policies and their climate pledges.
But you'd accept, wouldn't you, that it's a very complicated discussion to be had. It's a very complicated thing. And this Just Stop Oil slogan is very playgroundish, isn't it? It's very Vicky Pollard. It's quite childish. Just stop oil. I mean, come on, there's more to say than that, isn't there?
I would say that the answers are actually very simple. We need to stop new oil licensing, and that's what we're asking. You know, with the oil reserves that we have now and the oil fields that we have that are still going, that would provide us with 8 years of oil if we said no to new oil, and that's what we're asking for.
But how do the blockades advance that argument? They don't, do they? They simply cause nothing but disruption, and you get a negative reaction. I've got to tell you, we were expecting to get some messages of support from our viewers for you. We haven't had one, not one. We've had nothing but furious complaints from people. Nothing positive at all.
I wonder if any of you have read the latest IPCC reports that have come out this year. You know, what they have said is that we are on the road for climate catastrophe. We are on the road for 3 degrees of warming. This will happen to my generation, to your children's generation, potentially to your grandchildren. And I think we have a moral responsibility to act now. You know, we're supposed to be climate leaders. We're geopolitical leaders. We could set the way for the whole planet by committing to stopping oil, moving to energy efficiency, moving to renewables, moving to insulation. And I think the children and the future deserve at least that.
There are, from I think 2020, Larry, the source of UK electricity from renewables outstripped what we use from fossil fuels. So we are, as a country, moving in the right direction, but clearly not as fast as we should be. And that is the problem. There's a sense of urgency that the eco-activists have, that they fear that the rest of us don't embody that, and certainly government policy might not be, you know, reacting to that sense of urgency, which is required.
I think the problem I have is this idea that the one group of people have decided that they are the ones to save the world, and there's a certain po-faced, incredibly irritated. I'm getting it coming off in waves towards me here, like, how dare you question us because we know what's right. I'm going to glue my hand to some tarmac and then I'm going to be a martyr and I'm going to be a good person, while the rest of us can't get on with our days. I mean, you know, with respect, Miranda is 20. I'm more than twice her age. You know, I've got kids, I've got a job, I've got an elderly mother. We have to get on with our lives. Most people feel they're doing their bit. They are doing the recycling. They're trying. I can't afford an electric car. I can't afford a heat pump. Most people can't afford that. The people that the campaigners should be focusing on is the government, not on ordinary people. But it's about ego. There's no doubt that we've had a winter without any protest, but as soon as the sun comes out, oh, it's eco-festival time. And it is a festival. It's a big jamboree. It's let's get on social media. Let's sit down with a placard. Let's advertise to my friends what a great person I am. While the rest, ordinary people who have to go to work, can't get to work.
What's your response?
I just can't believe that that's what you're saying. The United Nations are telling us if we get to 1.7 degrees of warming, half of the population will be exposed to climate conditions that are unlivable,
And that's what you're here to talk about. But I suppose the point isn't about saying the facts over and over again. It's about the actual protest and about the disruption. And I suppose for some people, I suppose it is the disconnect between understanding what you think you're achieving by creating disruption to ordinary people versus those big, very important issues that we're all aware of, but clearly you are very passionate about. How do you think it affects the speeding up of those policies that you want? What is the connection
with all
between
due respect, you're saying that you're aware of this, but I don't think that you are aware. I don't think you are aware, and I don't think the government and the media are doing their duty to show how serious this is. But we're trying to uphold the science. The science is being ignored. The academics are being ignored.
Is it ignored? But we're not allowed to get diesel cars after 20.
We live in a democracy, and it's not the right of one small group of people to tell everybody else how to live. Go to the democratic process. Talk to your MP, get a government elected who is doing what you want them to do. Don't just simply think, well, we can change everything.
I have to say, Larry, if that was going to work, it would have worked by now. And I think that there is a point to say.
They have to win hearts and minds, and they're not winning
Well, you talk about democracy. Let's talk about hypocrisy. Now, this is a very typical message, okay, that we've had this morning. This is Jam on Twitter, speaking for many, many people. Everything these Stop Oil protesters wear or buy or eat was delivered or manufactured using oil. And that includes the glue that they use to stick themselves to the road with. What they're saying is that your protests are, by definition, massively imperfect. I mean, the clothes that you're wearing, to some extent, owe their existence to oil because they were taken in a car or a truck or a van to a shop. You know, there are so many ways that oil impacts on your life as a protester, but you don't acknowledge that.
We're talking about crop failure by 2030. We're talking about people in this country right now in fuel poverty because of the prices of oil, and you're talking about the clothes that I'm wearing.
No, listen,
this is so serious.
To be fair, up to now, you've answered questions, but that's a complete avoidance of the question. What about the accusation of hypocrisy, that actually you owe your lifestyle just as much to oil as the rest of us?
If we want to talk about hypocrisy, look at the government that has pledged for net zero by 2050, and now they're looking at opening 42 new oil fields, which will be releasing fossil fuels into the 2050s. That is a death sentence for my generation and for your children.
Are you going to answer that question, or would you rather?
How can we be talking about individual scale when we're asking the government to change so we as individuals no longer have to be reliant?
Is there any proof that any of the disruption you have caused has changed government policy? I would say no. All it has done is the government has tried to ban protests. It's been completely counterproductive. In the meantime, the collateral damage to ordinary people has been huge. We've been through such a trauma the last 2 years. I think there's a question of read the room here. The whole nation has been through this terrible trauma. A lot of people have lost their jobs, have lost their businesses, have lost their homes. And yet now, just when we think we're about to climb out of this terrible trauma, now it's like, can I get petrol to go and see my 90-year-old mother? I mean, that's why people are...
Okay, so I'm just going to stop it there. It's had enough of Richard Madeley and the wide-eyed, fish-eyed woman. So I'm going to begin by saying this. I am actually a Conservative. Get that out of the way. So I am actually a Conservative. When it comes to socialism, not a fan of it. For example, when it comes to business, you put your own money out on the line, you take a risk. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's your responsibility. But when it comes to this issue, there is a whole new generation now of Conservatives that actually want to make a change, they want to make a difference when it comes to climate change. And of course you do have the very strong traditional conservatives that want, like Richard and Madeley, and there's many others that want to ignore what's happening right now. But when you try and do these things, you have to do them in a correct way. The woman was talking about trying to get elected, trying to make actions and change them in that way. That's great. Respect that, that's great. It takes a long time. Not everyone is going to have that ability to become a Prime Minister or get them placed in as a Member of Parliament. How do you make change? How do you actively make a change in the first place? Go out there, you try and do it, but you've got to do it in the right way so it doesn't upset too many people. You've got to do it in the right way so it doesn't cause the problems we've been seeing, such as preventing ambulances from getting past, or prevent people from getting to schools, just like it did in the last video I showed, where the mum couldn't get her kids to school, for example. You can't be doing things like that. It's wrong. Yes, it's disruptive, gains attention, but that's not ultimately the end goal. Ultimately, the end goal is trying to decrease the amount of oil and decrease the amount of new oil refineries that are being put up. What they're doing right now is stopping ambulances from getting past. That's not something, I'm sure that's not something that young 20-year-old is wanting to do. When you're doing things like that, that's clearly not part of the goal. However, when they're doing it successfully and they're doing it by peaceful and they're coming up with ideas, that's great. You've got a lot of young engineers right now. If you look at someone like Elon Musk with Tesla, and he's creating all these things, and you've got Tesla, electric cars, that's brilliant. We can all understand that's a brilliant idea. It's brilliant what he's been doing. Okay, first I have to say I'm conservative. However, Miranda Whelehan handled herself very well. She stuck to herself, she stuck her ground, and she's handled herself very well against Richard Madeley, and I think anyone can understand that she was able to do that very well. And the woman brought up the fact that she's older. Just because you're older doesn't mean you're any wiser or anything like that, it really doesn't. However, she did mention a good point. She was talking about the ambulances, the gluing people, or gluing themselves to the tables. They've been doing that recently. You had the actor who glued himself down to the table in Starbucks, and that is a pointless method. I don't understand why they do that. That's a pointless method. It's pointless. You also have the vegans. They're going around at supermarkets. They're throwing milk everywhere. Pointless. Not only is it disruptive, it's vandalism, and it's wasting, right? Someone has to pay for that. You're not paying for it clearly, and it's causing damage of business. But what I do agree with when it comes to Miranda Whelehan, she's trying to actively do something. She's actively trying to do something and she's trying to make a difference. And there's a whole new generation now of conservatives that line up and they do agree with her. Because I do agree, you do need to make some sort of difference, some sort of climate change right now. For example, we are, and people say that's not true or that's not happening, we are looking at the next 30, 40 years at being in, and we've seen this already in places around the world, water drought. We've seen crops, and we've seen many different things happening and taking place right now around the world that shows if we don't take action, things are going to happen. I'm not going to turn this into some sort of Greta Thunberg video because I'm not that. And also, I'm not a fan of Greta Thunberg. Right, she talks, what was that thing she said? You stole my childhood, right? Well, now you've got millions and millions of pounds and you're flying around in private jets. So that private jet, that's not exactly helping out the climate. But this young woman who's in her 20s, she doesn't seem to be that at all. She seems to really care, so I hope she does great and she's able to do things. But I want to make my point clear. I'm not heavily against the idea, because it's great, right? We should help out, we should do our things. But when it's changing things to like plastic or those paper straws things, no. What paper No. Elon Musk is the way to do it. Electric cars, and of course not everyone is going to be this huge inventor or billionaire, but the best way to do it, come up with some sort of idea to help out the environment, and we go forward from there. But right now there's such a enemy with the Conservatives and the Socialists being the main climate activists, what they want to change things. There seems to be such a enemy, such a strong hate with both of them, having such a confrontation of ideas. But if the Socialists really want, and they need this in order to pay for their ideas, in order to try and help out, they need the money. They need money from us, from the capitalists, from the ones that have the money. They need that to fund their ideas. For example, let's say they want to go to Africa, build school. Brilliant. Brilliant. Love that. Right, they want to do that, but they need money. They need money to fund for it. To fund for the school, the equipment, the resources. Same thing goes for here, for the environment changes. If they want to come up with an idea to be able to afford it, they need the money. They need the funding. How do you think, when it comes to what's the next clean up ocean, he's a socialist, I believe he is, socialist, liberal, he needs the funding. He gets millions and millions, tens of millions of pounds of funding every single year, and he needs it. But what does he do with the money? That's the difference. What he does with the money, he takes it and he builds these massive clean-up machines that takes them out to the ocean and cleans up all the rubbish. That is amazing. If I had millions and millions of pounds, I would probably give it to him. I would give it to him. I think that's an amazing thing to do, to clean up the oceans. I also think it's a great thing. We should be taking care of the environment and do it in the right way. So you're not jumping on top of trains. You're not stopping people getting where they need to go. You're not stopping ambulances from getting to the hospitals or getting to people to help them out. You're not stopping mums from getting their children to school. Thank you for watching. Like, comment down below. Comment down below on what your thoughts are about it. Tell me if you're for this idea of climate activists and how they can do it in the right way and what's the wrong way. And also tell me, are you a Conservative? Are you a Liberal? Tell me. Comment down below. Thank you for watching and goodbye.